I am in Clemson, South Carolina today to check out a very historic church. It has been around a very long time and looks pretty much the same today as it did when it was built. So, let's take a look. The old stone church is over 200 years old, and the cemetery predates the church. The church was added to the National Register of Historic Places on November 5, 1971, and is located at 101 Stone Circle in Clemson, South Carolina. The total area of the church grounds is 20 acres. Of course, that includes the cemetery. The construction of the church started in 1797, as indicated by the church cornerstone. Construction of the church was completed in 1802. Originally, the church was located in the Pendleton district of South Carolina. In 1826, the Pendleton district was divided and the church was part of the Pickens district of South Carolina. In 1868, the Pickens district was split and the church became part of Oconee County. Again, in 1968, the area the church is located in was annexed back to Pickens County and is now part of the city limits of Clemson, South Carolina. The history of the church actually began in 1790, when the Hopewell Presbyterian Church was built in the Pickens district. The church was made of logs, and in 1796 it was destroyed by fire. John Miller, a printer in Pendleton, South Carolina, donated some land to the congregation, and construction started on the old stone church in 1797. I was able to make contact with Mr. Curtis Arnold of the Old Stone Church and Cemetery Association, of which he is the president, and he was kind enough to meet me at the church and allowed me to go inside and take video and images of this wonderful historic building. He also took me out to the cemetery and pointed out some of the historical grave sites that are located there. So much of what I learned about the Old Stone Church came from Mr. Arnold, and I am truly grateful for his time and insight. As I mentioned earlier, the cornerstone of the church was laid in 1797, and the first service was held at the church in 1802 after its completion. The church is constructed of field stone. The farmers of the day would bring stones to this location as they cleared their fields, and the stones were used to build the church. The wall of the church is 2 feet thick. The windows of the church were replaced in 2016. The doors of the church have been replaced over the years as needed. And also, they have replaced the shutters when necessary. Mr. Arnold told me that they are currently in the process of replacing several shutters at the church. And I did read that the windows and doors are the same size, but I am not sure if this is accurate or not. I asked if the stone steps were original, and Mr. Arnold wasn't sure, but assumed that they are. It certainly looks to be the case. Now let's take a look inside the church. The pews are not original. The ones you see are replicated and were added around 1992. Now there is one original pew that is located in the slave gallery that we will see later on in the video. The wood flooring in the church is original, which means that it is 221 years old and is holding up very well, I would say. I don't know what type of wood this is, but it has certainly done its job, no doubt. The roof has been redone, but the crossbeams you see are original. I am not sure when the roof was replaced, and if Mr. Arnold told me, I don't remember. Mr. Arnold told me that the Charleston, South Carolina earthquake of 1886 did cause some damage to the church, even though Charleston is approximately 250 miles away. This earthquake occurred on August 31st, 1886, at about 9:50 p.m. and registered about a 7 on the Richter scale. The shock of the earthquake was felt from as far north as Boston, Massachusetts, to Chicago, Illinois, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin to the northwest, and New Orleans to the west, as well as Florida and Cuba to the south, as well as Bermuda. The damage to the church was apparently limited to the inside walls of the church, if I remember correctly. Repair work was done in the early 1900s and some extensive repairs in the 1960s. But Mr. Arnold told me that right now the church is in as good of condition as it has been in a while. The pulpit, or lectern, is original and looks fantastic. One of the things that stood out to me is how high it is. Certainly, anyone speaking from this pulpit would command the attention of the congregation. And looking at the back of the lectern, you can see the age and character of this unique piece. I asked Mr. Arnold what the square wooden items were used for in the windowsills of the church. He wasn't sure, but thought they might have been used as a place to put candles in order to light the church when needed. Maybe used as a place for a candlestick or a candelabrum. Another item of note in the church is this organ. Mr. Arnold told me that it does still work. He also said that not a lot is known about it, but it dates back to the 1800s. Now let's head up to the balcony of the church. This area is where the slaves would sit during the church services. In the early days of the church, about 40% of the congregation were slaves, and they were regular members. The balcony is also where the last original pew of the church is located. You access the balcony by using the stairway located at the back of the church. Also, the main entrance to the church is located at the rear of the church. This is the view you would have if you had sat in the balcony during a service at the church. It affords you a great view of this grand old building and allows you to see it from a different perspective. As I mentioned, the balcony has the only original pew still left in the church. The pew you see in front has been part of the old stone church for well over 200 years. I am not sure how comfortable it would be to sit on, but it is certainly a remarkable piece of history. One other item about the church I would like to mention is about the roof. The roof is made of treated cedar chips, and this current roof was installed in 2003. The estimated life of these types of coverings is 20 to 30 years. Before we move on to the graveyard, I would like to mention the old stone church cottage that is located directly behind the church. The cottage was built by the Civilian Conservation Corps in 1933. It is similar in style to the church and was requested to be built by the Presbyterian local council to serve as the conservator's house. Now the cottage is used in association with the Clemson Alumni Association's military group for military veterans to use if they want to go back to school at Clemson. The Old Stone Church Cemetery has over 2,000 known graves, and over 300 of the graves are veterans that date from the Revolutionary War forward. There are 2 sections of the cemetery, one on each side of the church. The older portion of the cemetery, which you see here, predates the church. The oldest grave is thought to be from 1794. There are no slaves buried at the cemetery, although, as I mentioned earlier, many slaves were members of the church. Most often slaves were buried at the plantations. Recently, a ground-penetrating radar scan was performed at the old portion of the cemetery in order to find unmarked graves. They did find quite a few. These graves are now marked by these white indicators like you see here. As I mentioned, there are 2 sections of the cemetery, one on each side of the church. Here is a picture of the newer section. I am not sure what year this was opened for burials. I would like to take a few minutes to show you some of the historic graves that are located in the older section of the cemetery. Here is the entrance to the cemetery, and if you look to the right in the background, you can see a brick wall that holds a family burial plot. This will be our first stop. The Pickens family plot contains several Pickens family members, including General Andrew Pickens. General Pickens was an Indian fighter and played a major role at the Battle of Cowpens during the American Revolutionary War. This battle was fought in Cowpens, South Carolina. The engagement at Cowpens is considered to be a turning point for the Patriot cause, as it was an early major win over the British. For his part in the battle, Pickens was promoted to Brigadier General. General Pickens was an elder at the Old Stone Church and, along with Robert Anderson, donated the original pews and the pulpit that we saw earlier in the video. Pickens also served in the United States House of Representatives, and the county of Pickens is named after General Pickens. And that's not all. The town of Pickens that is located in Pickens County is also named after General Pickens. General Pickens was born on September 13, 1739, and died on August 11, 1817, at the age of 77. The next grave I would like to point out is that of Robert Anderson. Anderson and Andrew Pickens were lifelong friends, and Anderson was a captain in Pickens' regiment and rose to the rank of colonel after the Battle of Cowpens during the Revolutionary War. Anderson also fought with Andrew Pickens against the Cherokee Indians that resulted in a treaty being signed in which the Cherokees gave up the land that is now the counties of Anderson, Pickens, and Oconee in South Carolina. Anderson also served in the South Carolina House of Representatives from 1791 to 1794, and again from 1801 to 1802. He also served as Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina from 1796 to 1798. Both the county and city of Anderson, South Carolina, are named in honor of Robert Anderson. Anderson was born on November 15, 1741, and died on January 9, 1813, at the age of 71. The last 2 grave sites that we will visit have unique and interesting stories, and for very different reasons. The first is the grave of a Cherokee Indian named Osapa. I'm not sure if I am pronouncing his name correctly, and if not, I apologize. This grave is thought to be one of, if not the oldest grave in the cemetery. Osapa was buried here in 1794. He is the only Native American buried in the cemetery. Piled stones are used to mark his grave, and there is also an inscribed stone marker at his gravesite. Not much is known about Osapa. I have read that he may have befriended the white settlers and that he and Andrew Pickens may also have been friends. I also read that Osapa may have worked for Pickens as a scout, but again, this was not confirmed. The fact is, there is no verifiable documentation concerning the history of Osapa. This is the grave of Eliza Huger. She has been the subject of numerous legends, but none have been verified. One story goes that she was from a wealthy family from Charleston, South Carolina, and she left home and went to New Orleans, Louisiana. While in New Orleans, it is said that she went to work in a brothel. Her two brothers went to Louisiana to bring her back to South Carolina, and the brothers found her either in a brothel or somewhere with her lover, and either one or both of her brothers shot and killed Eliza and her customer and or lover. One of her brothers apparently was living in the Pendleton district of South Carolina at this time and brought her body back to be buried. The only church that would accept her remains was the Old Stone Church, under one condition, that a wall be built around her grave to keep her sinful spirits confined. Also, part of the inscription on her gravestone reads, "A brother's sorrow," and legend says this was the shame the brothers felt because she became a prostitute, and they shot her because of this. There are also stories that Eliza was a powerful witch and that she was killed for heresy. And it is said that lightning has struck her grave several times and that this is the reason for the damage to her grave. Also, I was told by someone who works at Clemson University that none of the legends about Eliza are true. She told me that she had researched the story behind Eliza and found that she had died from an illness, possibly yellow fever. She had gotten sick after one of her brothers had encouraged her to move to the upstate area of South Carolina. Because he felt responsible for her death, he had the words, "A brother's sorrow," put on her tombstone. And according to this story, the wall around the grave was purely family preference. I hope you enjoyed this video on the Old Stone Church in Clemson, South Carolina. If you are in the area, I encourage you to visit the church and the cemetery. There are certainly many more historic graves to see than I had time to show in this video. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Curtis Arnold again for his time and insight concerning the history of this church. If you would like to contact the Old Stone Church Commission concerning an event or the purchase of a burial plot, I will leave a link in the description of this video. Thank you for watching, and please like, subscribe, and comment. Have a great day.